So for this task, we're looking at stakeholder relationships. So the stakeholders in relation to your center where you're working will vary. So for an example of a stakeholder relationship might be that you work at a sport and recreation facility where there's a number of sporting clubs based there. So those sporting clubs would be stakeholders. Now your trainer will go over the different type of stakeholders in class. We've got some examples here, but again, they will vary between center and center. But what you're required to do is you're required to reflect on two stakeholders relationships that exist for your facility. So to complete the task, you're required to discuss the role and function of the stakeholder. So who the stakeholder is and their role and function. So again, with the example we spoke about before, which might be a common one that you do, you're speaking about a sporting club that's based there, and what's the function of the stakeholder. They obviously would pay a rent to the facility and use the facilities to offer community sport, etc., etc. Who in the organisation deals with the stakeholder? Is it the manager? Is it you? Is it all staff? Pros, the good things that relate to the stakeholder relationship, and if any cons related to the stakeholder relationship. And then the next part, the methods to communicate with a stakeholder, again, will depend upon the stakeholder. Some stakeholders you're going to be communicating with all the time. Some it might be just a meeting every 6 months. Evaluation methods used to measure stakeholder relationships. Do you collect feedback? Is it through meetings? How are you establishing that, I guess, the relationship's working from both points of view and both sides are happy with the relationship? And describe your own dealings with the stakeholder. So you're required to do that for two different stakeholders. And we have the word counts listed there. For this task, it may help to sit down with your supervisor at work and interview them about stakeholder relationships. So for this final part of the assessment task, you need to analyse another stakeholder relationship. Now this template relates back to assessment task 8, which was a team building activity. So you need to analyse your involvement in regards to that stakeholder relationship. Here you're going to list who the stakeholder was. It might have been the sporting team or the business. Remember your supervisor simulated it and set up a scenario. So you list the stakeholder there. So the stakeholder is going to be both the manager and the participants. And as part of this, you need to discuss the strategies you used and the feedback you were given by the various stakeholders. So there's 4 questions here. So by various stakeholders, I mean the relationship with not only the manager who got you in to run the team building activity and set the requirements, but also the individuals that took part in the team building activity. So both of them are the stakeholders that you're going to discuss in this task. So for this final part of the template, we're looking about a 100-word reflection. So 100 words spread across all areas of this template.